Stay tuned. Coming up on this episode, it's part 2 of a 2-part discussion about how stress can impact memory and recall. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com. Hello and welcome to episode 295 of the Situation Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this program is to help to improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SAMatters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota, having just returned from delivering a program for the International Association of Fire Chiefs at the Volunteer and Combination Officer Section Symposium in the Sun in Clearwater Beach, Florida. Today's feature segment is brought to you by SimsUshare. SimsUshare is a simple and affordable way to help you develop and practice situational awareness skills. You can quickly build sims from your photos to simulate almost any kind of incident, including active threat scenarios. And the new SimsUshare Command Training Center now lets you conduct multi-company drills over the internet so that you can even do these drills while your companies stay in station. Check them out at SimsUshare.com. All right, let's jump into today's feature segment, part 2 of a 2-part discussion about how stress can impact memory and recall. Tommy, for the benefit of everybody here, say your ABCs as quickly as you can. Go ahead.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Good. On average, that takes a person about 1.5 to 2.5 seconds. Why? Why? Because it's memorized. You don't have to think about it, Tommy. It just came out. All right? Kevin, say your ABCs backwards as fast as you can. Go ahead.
Only seen that on one video.
Well, go ahead. Do it.
I won't even try.
What's last?
Z.
Okay, and before Z is?
Y. W. X, Y. Z, Y, W.
Smoke. Start over.
Z. Y.
You just failed.
X. W. U.
No. Stop, Kevin. Put you out of your misery. What's the difference between what Tommy and Kevin did here? Subconscious task, conscious task. What Tommy did effortlessly could take Kevin or his equivalent 100 to 500 times longer and be fraught with error. I mean, here he was in 10 seconds and made 3 or 4 mistakes in reciting the alphabet backwards. You see the difference? You see how critically, how catastrophically important it is for us to train in ways that are realistic and repetitive so that we build up that memory that stores it into subconscious, because when you're under stress and you're operating either at a police scene, an EMS scene, or a fire scene, and you have something happen and you have to respond with instantaneous decision, do you want it to be Tommy's performance or Kevin's performance? This one will save you. This one's going to kill you. And if it isn't going to kill you, it's going to take you a lot longer to figure out what to do. The difference between subconscious and conscious. Now, Tommy didn't have to think about it. Kevin, your little wheels, your little squirrels, man, they were running around that wheel fast trying to figure out what's the next letter, what's the next letter. In fact, you didn't get to see, some of you didn't get to see what I got to see. I got to see Kevin when he was trying to do this. And Kevin, everybody that I've done this with, everybody does what you did. Here's what Kevin did. Z, Y, X. What's Kevin looking at?
Picturing the alphabet.
He's looking at the alphabet that is above the chalkboard in kindergarten. Right?
I don't know why I was looking at that, but I was running it through my mind.
Yes. Well, as you're running through your mind, and here's a lesson. We are visual learners. So when we can't figure it out, we go back and visualize at a time and a place that we knew it. And Kevin was saying, what stands next to the Y on the list of the alphabet over the blackboard at school? X. And what lies next to that? U. That's what we do because we're visual learners, predominantly visual learners.
One thing he did though is he realized his limitation right away, which meant he probably would have gotten some other type of help quicker. Because right away he said, I'm not even going to try because I don't think I can do it.
True, but sometimes, like we're at an emergency scene, he might have to react so quickly to something that happens so unpredictably. Like he was, if I just told him at break, hey Kevin, I'm going to ask you to do this in the next session. He might have, practiced it or wrote it down, because I preempted him. But I caught him off guard. Just like things that happen in fire scenes catch us off guard, instantaneously, okay, Kevin, you got to do it. Oh, I did the same thing with Tommy, but he didn't go, oh. He knew it. He had it memorized. Catastrophically important lesson for us is to ensure that we train our responders so that these lessons are rehearsed and automatic, scripted routines so they know what to do when they're operating under stress. All right, realistic, repetitive training can build muscle memory that can save your life. I'm gonna tell a story, and to be able to tell this story, I need to have a volunteer come up because it's a two-person story. So I need to have somebody that'll come up and help me out. And let's not have it be one of our 5 people. They've endured enough stress for the morning session. So if I could have somebody who'll come up and help me out, I'd appreciate it. All right. Oh, I got a police officer. Sir, are you packing? Okay, good. All right, Tim, we're going to do a role play. And this role play is you get to play the role of the bad guy. Okay, so the first thing you have to do to get in character is kind of look toward the audience and just look bad. Okay. Well, okay, you got the bad thing going on. All right. Tim is a bad guy who's robbing a convenience store, and he's got a gun. That's why I asked if he was packing. I didn't want him to pull out the real deal. Okay, he's got a gun, and he's got the gun pointed on the clerk. Okay. And the gun has a barrel. Yeah. All right. Yeah. He's got the cop stance thing down. I'm sure the bad guy who's robbing the convenience store doesn't. Did you hear what he said? He said one in the chest, one in the head. I'm all of a sudden very uncomfortable. All right. He's robbing the convenience store, and the clerk's, got his hands up. And while he's robbing the convenience store, up pulls a police car. It's a marked police car. And but they don't know the convenience store is being robbed. They're just stopping in to get to do some shopping. But Tim, the bad guy, sees the cop car pull up, and he doesn't want to get into a shootout with the police. So he goes to the back of the store and he hides out. And the 2 officers come into the store and they split up. And one goes over to where they have the Chad, did you say donuts?
Boom, boom.
Yeah. Did you say donuts? You can handle that later. Okay. I told you he was a cop. You don't say donuts. Gosh, you got to be respectful. Respectful. One goes over to where they have the energy rings, and the other one goes up the aisle shopping. All right. Now the one that's going up the aisle shopping doesn't know that Tim the bad guy is hiding out in the back of the store, and he's walking up the aisle. And let's just say this is, Tim, over here, Tim. You're hiding out over here. And the cop comes up the aisle, and Tim, the bad guy, hopes the cop turns left to avoid the confrontation, but it doesn't happen. And the cop turns to the right, and he's face to face with Tim, the bad guy, who points his gun at the cop, and his hands go up. All right, now, this cop, if you're not tracking in this story, is in a high-stress work environment at this moment, okay? And he's got to make some pretty tough decisions in a short amount of time. Now, fortunately, the police officer has been trained in defensive tactics. He knows what to do. He's already had this training, and his automatic, subconscious, pre-scripted training kicks in. And he reaches out, and he snatches the gun right out of the bad guy's hands, and the bad guy is now unarmed. All right? Yeah, turn and give him the, oh, no. Somewhere between I'm surprised and I'm screwed. Because one minute he had the gun, and now he doesn't have the gun. He's unarmed. And the cop's got the gun. Now, this is all caught on the video surveillance tape of the convenience store. And then the cop hands the gun back to him,
Okay.
puts his hands up again. Now, I have to ask you, is that logical behavior? No, that's not logical at all. I mean, you wouldn't do that. If somebody pointed a gun at you and you had enough mad skills that you could take that gun off of them, you would never hand it back and say, Tim, that was fun, let's do it again. All right? I really enjoyed that. No, you would do something else, but you wouldn't give it back to him as if to say, let's have a do-over. Yeah. So we have to understand, why did this happen? See, if we were judging, we would say, what an incompetent police officer. But if we stop judging and put ourselves in his shoes, we have a different perspective. Because we wind the clock back a couple of years when this officer is in his defensive tactics training class. And the instructor is teaching Tim, the officer, and Rich, the officer, on how to do this. Okay? So the instructor is saying, okay, Tim, hold the gun on Rich. Rich, here's how you do this. Now, Rich, you got to do a couple of things. You have to consider whether he's holding the gun left-handed, right-handed, two-handed. You have to consider whether it's semi-automatic weapon or revolver. You have to consider whether he's holding it Blaine bad or Minneapolis bad. Okay, all these things factor in how you're going to do this. Okay, you got it, Rich? Oh, yeah, I think I got it. All right, go ahead and practice it slowly. All right, good. Give it back, do it again. Ready? Practice it again. Okay, that's getting better. Give it back, do it again. Ready? Practice it again. Getting better, give it back, do it again. Okay, so he does this till he gets good at it. Practices it over and over and over again. He's building up a routine. Then the officer finds himself in the convenience store at the real incident, stress levels up, his brain goes and finds the subconscious automatic programming on what to do. There's Tim the bad guy with the gun on the police officer, and the automatic script plays. Ready, Rich? You know what to do. Hearing my instructor tell me what to do, and I reach out and I take the gun off of him, and the script continues to play. Good job, Rich. Give it back. Let's do it again. And that's exactly what he did. And it defies all logic. The only reason this officer lived is the store clerk alerted the other officer, who went up another aisle just as Tim had his gun pointed back at the first officer, and he shot him. And then they played the video surveillance tape back and saw this on the video surveillance tape. Now you can bet the first officer was wishing that the tape system wasn't working that day so that this would not get out, because you can imagine what his fellow officers would do when they would get wind of the fact that he did this. But this officer's training was flawed. Let's give Tim, our bad guy, a hand. Thank you, Tim. Good job. Word. Now, what was flawed about the officer's training? Yeah, they didn't follow through in the training. They didn't tell them they didn't practice what to do when they take the gun away. See, when you take the gun away from somebody, what's the next thing you do after that? No, Chad. Oh, see, Firefighter's answered everything. He said, shoot him. He's an unarmed man and you got a video camera going.
When he gave him the gun back.
Yeah, give the gun back, then shoot him. No, you do a takedown and you handcuff him. Now, didn't he learn that? Didn't he learn how to do a takedown and handcuff? Yeah, he did. But here's the problem. This officer went through a 15-week recruit training program, and in week 3, they taught the officers how to do a takedown and a handcuff, and they practiced takedown and a handcuff, and they did it over and over and over again. They got good at it, built up muscle memory, and they got an A on the practical, and they all went on to week 4, week 5, week 6, and then out in week 12, they're learning how to disarm somebody. They're learning how to take the gun off of somebody. And the instructor says, look, we're a little pressed for time because we only got, a certain amount of time to dedicate to this disarming. So I'm going to tell you that remember that when you disarm them, do the takedown and the handcuff. Now we're not going to practice it, but you guys have already done it and you're good at it. But I'm going to tell you takedown and handcuff, right? It makes sense. You will do that, right? Oh yeah, duh. Surely once I take the gun off, I'm going to take them down and handcuff them. So they practice this disarming over and over and over again. That becomes an automatic scripted routine. Now, back when I was a fire instructor, I was flawed at how I was teaching my firefighters how to do things. And that flaw that I had is the same flaw that was here that I didn't realize until I went to brain science school. And here's the flaw. When you teach somebody a script, like takedown and handcuff, and they do it over and over again, it goes up and it resides in the subconscious. Let's just say that it's at a point right underneath my skull right here. And then in week 15 or week 12, they train them on how to do the disarm. And they do it over and over and over again, and it's going to go up and it's going to reside in the subconscious because it's a scripted routine. What I used to think is that those two tasks, when they went up into the brain, they would go up there and they would be side by side. So you would do one and then you'd automatically know to do the other. It doesn't work that way. There are over 10 billion neurons in the brain. Okay? The chances of the neurons that contain those lessons residing side by side is the equivalent of you winning the Powerball 10 straight drawings in a row. Not very likely. What is more likely to happen is that those two lessons go up into the cortex and they reside at completely different places. Let's just say one resides here and the other resides here. Okay, we got a problem? No, not really. I mean, look, they're only just, a couple inches apart. How long could it take for that information to get from one to the other? A long time. The distance between here and here, while physically might only be a couple inches, in brain parlance, it's miles of neural real estate, miles of synapses and connections that the information has to travel through to get from here to here. It's kind of like the equivalent of us being in Blaine and saying we have to go into downtown Minneapolis. Now to do that, we can go down the highway and get there quickly, or we could just trudge across hill and valley and field and woods and streams, and we would eventually get there, but it might take us a whole day or even longer to get there. When we have those two lessons that reside up here in the brain, and we haven't connected the two lessons with practice, we have no highway. What in brain parlance we'd call a neural network. There's no highway built between those two lessons. So when this lesson has to find this lesson, it has to go over hill and valley and through the woods and over streams, and it'll eventually get there. It may eventually find it, but it isn't automatic because there's no highway connecting them. What creates the highway? Repetition of both tasks performed in sequence. This task physically performed, Then this task, physically performed, builds the highway that connects the two. Make sense? Without the highway, we'll be slow to respond, slow to know the next thing to do. That's what happened to this officer.
That was a good example, another good example of that learned behavior like that in an airplane. One that I happened to work on a bunch, but the pilot was training in there himself, just doing his own training. It had a parachute and they have a handle here to pull. And in case there's an emergency, you can pull that when the chute comes out for the airplane. Well, he practiced that, and emergency, bang, and he's just going to pull on the handle. So he had that learned behavior like that, and unfortunately it came to where he needed it one day, and he had, assuming, pulled the handle, and nothing happened, the parachute didn't come out, and he ends up in a less desirable landing place, because he was forced to land instead of the parachute. They asked him, how come you didn't pull the chute? I did, it didn't go off. That was the FAA report. Well, then after the inspection of the airplane and aircraft, you start putting these two reports together, the little pin was still, the safety pin was still in there. Because he'd go and practice,
right.
He never pulled the pin out.
Right.
Because he didn't want to go off.
Right.
So that's, my parachute didn't go off.
Right.
It just,
Yeah.
I had a very similar one the first time I actually had to perform the Heimlich maneuver on somebody, because when you do it on each other, you don't hit them nearly as hard. So the first time I did it, the guy's looking at me like, so I go around and I hit them like I've done 100 times on when we're doing it in each other practicing, and then you actually really, really have to hit them. So
Yeah. I had a very tragic example of this happen when I was a fire chief in Ohio. We got a report of a cardiac arrest, and we responded to it. Now, in this business, when you get a report of a cardiac arrest, we're expecting somebody, say, 40s on up, not the 6-year-old that we ended up having. And the medic took the paddles and put the paddles on the chest. This is pre-AED by 30 years. Put the paddles on the chest of this child who was in VFib, and the paddles were charged, and he said, clear, and everybody cleared, and he went and never discharged the paddles. Because that's how we used to practice it. See, we didn't have the mannequins that you could actually discharge. This is Johnny and Roy day. Get the paddles, put the lube on them, smear them up, put them on the person's chest, fire that baby up to 320 joules, hit the button, and smell it burning. But when we practiced it, we didn't have the mannequins to practice it on. We practiced on each other. One of the things we never did, because we never had the guts to do it, was actually charge it up to 320 and let somebody pretend to stick it on our chest. So we never even charged it. But when we'd stick it on the chest, we'd say clear, and then we'd pretend, pretend like we were shocking them. And that's what he did. He pretended like he shocked the kid, and then he put the paddles back down to see what the rhythm was, and the defibrillator was still charged. It'll show when it discharge, when you actually discharge it. He never fired the paddles. He did exactly what he had practiced over and over again. High stress, child, cardiac arrest, and we said, "You didn't discharge the paddles." He's like, "Yeah, I did." What do you mean? No, look at the defibrillator. He says, "Well, it must have malfunctioned," and we all watched him do it. He didn't even realize that he'd done it. Now, is it possible that we could shortcut our training? Yeah, I think it's possible. Imagine that it's August here in Minnesota. We know it gets hot, 90, 95, high humidity, and we're going to do a drill. The drill topic that we're going to do is ventilation. And your company officer wants to be a good guy or good gal, and they don't want to get you all sweaty and bothered from doing this drill, but we still have to do the drill topic. So what they're going to say is we're going to go out to the side of the station, or maybe out to the drill tower if you have one, and we're going to take a ladder and we're going to put the ladder up against the side of the building. I'm going to have you climb up the ladder, with a pike pole and simulate breaking out the windows. But it's really hot out, so I don't want you to get all sweated up. So I'm going to tell you just to wear your helmet and gloves and not wear all your turnout gear. And we're going to practice it over and over and over again so that you get good at it. And they do that. Do you think it's possible that if a firefighter learned to do it that way, that then they might find themselves at the scene of a real fire, climbing up a ladder at a real house fire, using a pike pole to break out the windows, wearing nothing but a helmet and gloves? Have you ever seen or heard of such a thing happening in all of your life? Yes, sir.
I saw it on your tape this morning.
You saw it on the video this morning. Now, show of hands, how many of you, when you saw that firefighter do that, thought to yourself, man, that's dumb, or that's incompetent? Come on, yeah, see the hands up. Yeah. See all those hands up? You're judging. You're judging. That's the same thing that I used to do, that I don't do anymore. Now when I see firefighters do those dumb things, I don't say, what a dumb thing. I say, why does this person do this? Why does what they're doing seem to make sense to them at the time that they're doing it? Just like, why does the officer give the gun back? He's not giving the gun back as if to say, I'm going to give you another chance to shoot me. He's giving the gun back because it reflects his training. The firefighter is breaking the windows out because it reflects a training or a habit that he has built over time. Now, maybe he wasn't trained that way, but he is the operator of the apparatus. So maybe he drives the apparatus to the scene not wearing any of his gear. And I'm okay with that, because if you wear big clunky boots, it can get in the way of the pedals, and if you wear the jet coat, it can get in the way of turning the wheel. So maybe he doesn't wear his gear while he's responding to the scene. But then when he gets to the scene, one of the first things that he should do is put all his gear on, because you just never know when you're going to get called into action to do something. But he doesn't do it, and he doesn't do it over and over and over and over again, and then you have a habit of arriving on the scene and not putting your gear on, and then you're getting called into action, and you find yourself doing a high-risk, high-consequence thing without your gear on. Well, that's it. Episode 295 of the Situation Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to our platinum sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, SimsUShare. Thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. And thank you to all the companies, agencies, organizations, and associations that have hosted Situational Awareness Matters training programs. Thank you to all the organizations that have hosted a live stream training program where I come to your organization live via the internet to train your personnel virtually. Thank you to the more than 3,500 students and graduates of the highly acclaimed Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. The feedback I've received from Academy graduates is just amazing and humbling, and I thank you for that. And most importantly of all, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SAMatters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.